Scoring a #1 debut on the Billboard 200 is often seen as the ultimate indicator of an album's success, but some albums fail to maintain that momentum and fall off the chart in a matter of weeks. In this video, we'll look at 8 albums that debuted on #1 and disappeared. Madame X by Madonna. Madonna's Madame X debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200 in June 2019, making it her 9th chart-topping album. It moved 95,000 album equivalent units in its first week, an impressive achievement for a veteran artist in the streaming era. Of those, 90,000 were pure sales, largely thanks to merchandise and ticket bundles. Despite a strong debut, the album suffered a dramatic fall, dropping to number 77 in just the second week, and completely exiting the chart after only 2 weeks, making it one of the shortest-lived #1 albums in Billboard 200 history. Madame X received mixed to positive reviews from critics. There were a few radio-friendly singles, like Medellin with Maluma, which received minimal airplay, but what ultimately doomed the album was its lack of streaming traction. With only 2 weeks on the Billboard 200, the album proved how even a superstar legacy and a #1 debut cannot guarantee long-lasting success. Unbreakable by Janet Jackson. Janet Jackson's Unbreakable marked her return after a 7-year hiatus and her first release under her own Rhythm Nation label. Debuting on #1 on the Billboard 200 in October 2015 with 116,000 pure sales, the album was her 7th chart-topping project, a historic achievement that tied her with Madonna for the most #1 albums by a female artist at the time. On the album, she reunited with long-term collaborators Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Songs like No Sleep featuring J. Cole saw a moderate buzz, peaking at number 63 on the Billboard Hot 100. Despite the high debut and positive reviews, Unbreakable suffered a huge decline in the following weeks. It fell out of the top 10 by its 3rd week, and after just 11 weeks, it dropped off the Billboard 200 entirely. Unlike many pop stars who sustain album performance with hit singles, the album lacked the momentum to stay in public consciousness. Janet's low public profile at the time also contributed to the album's short-lived chart life. Courage by Celine Dion. Courage, Celine Dion's first English-language studio album in years, debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200 in November 2019 with 113,000 album equivalent units sold, of which a massive 109,000 were pure album sales, showing her strength with older audiences, who are usually physical copy buyers. This was her first US chart topper in 17 years, dating back to A New Day Has Come in 2002. However, despite the headline-grabbing debut, the album vanished from the Billboard 200 in just 4 weeks, a very short stay for such a high-profile release. The album's sales strategy was done with concert ticket bundles tied to her Courage World Tour, a tactic that could secure a strong debut at the time, but it wasn't sustainable. Streaming accounted for less than 3% of the album's total first-week numbers, a very low figure in a music economy now driven largely by Spotify. Once the initial physical and ticket bundle sales were counted, the album saw a 95% drop in sales in its second week, falling to number 111 on the chart. Ultimately, the album couldn't gain traction beyond her core audience. In a modern era, an album needs to sustain decent streaming numbers to be a long-lasting success. God Did by DJ Khaled. DJ Khaled's God Did debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200 in September 2022, earning 107,000 units, largely driven by streaming. The album was boosted by a stacked guest list, including Jay-Z, Drake, Lil Wayne, Future, Eminem, Kanye West, and SZA. Khaled's typical formula for creating high-profile collaborations. Even if he doesn't make the beats or rap, he's more of a marketer. The title track, God Did, became a viral moment thanks to Jay-Z's 4-minute verse, which he performed at the Grammys. However, the album experienced a fast decline. By its 4th week, it had fallen out of the top 30 and exited the Billboard 200 after just 12 weeks. Khaled's reputation for blockbuster albums packed with hits was dying out. While songs like Stayin' Alive featuring Drake and Lil Baby performed decently on streaming platforms, they lacked the longevity of Khaled's previous mega hits like Wild Thoughts and I'm the One. While he remained a brand on social media, the album's short run showed a shift in his public perception. Maxident by Stray Kids. Stray Kids made history with Maxident, becoming the second ever K-pop act after BTS to top the Billboard 200 with more than just one album in a single year. Following Ordinary earlier in 2022, Maxident debuted at number 1 in October 2022 with 117,000 album equivalent units sold, including an impressive 110,000 in pure sales, mostly thanks to multiple collectible CD variants that their superfans bought out. The achievement was a testament to the group's global fan base known as Stay, which had become one of the most mobilized in K-pop. Despite the massive first week figures, the album had almost no staying power. In just 6 weeks, it fell off the Billboard 200 entirely, one of the biggest drop-offs for a number 1 that year. The reasons were clear. The US chart performance relied almost entirely on physical sales, not on sustained streams. The album did not spawn a breakout single that could help maintain interest beyond the initial surge. The album's trajectory is part of a growing trend in K-pop's Billboard performance: huge front-loaded sales due to direct-to-fan marketing, followed by a quick chart exit. Though Maxident was successful globally, debuting at number 1 in South Korea and Japan, in the US, its commercial relevance was short-lived. Iridescence by Hampton. In September 2018, Hampton's Iridescence stormed to the top of the charts, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard 200 with 101,000 album equivalent units sold, of which 79,000 were pure album sales. This was a big milestone from the self-described boy band collective, which had cultivated a cult following online through their Saturation mixtape trilogy. However, despite the promising launch, the album disappeared from the Billboard 200 entirely after just 3 weeks, making it one of the shortest-lived number 1 albums in modern chart history. The quick drop-off was because the majority of the first week numbers were driven by digital downloads or merch bundles, but unlike artists with modern mainstream appeal, Hampton lacked the radio play and playlist traction to sustain the album's performance. It failed to connect beyond their loyal fan base. Unfinished Business by R. Kelly and Jay-Z. When R. Kelly and Jay-Z teamed up for their second collab project, Unfinished Business, anticipation was high. Following the platinum certified The Best of Both Worlds in 2022, the sequel debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 in October 2004, selling 215,000 copies in its first week. At the time, this figure was a commercial win, especially given the public controversies and creative tensions surrounding the duo. However, the album failed to sustain momentum. It spent only 12 weeks on the Billboard 200 before disappearing entirely, an unusually short lifespan for 2 of the biggest names at the time. The singles Big Chips and Don't Let Me Die failed to gain major traction on radio, and they stopped promoting the album together. Even with a strong debut, they hated each other, culminating in the infamous onstage pepper spray incident at Madison Square Garden during the tour. The lack of synergy, promotional push, and quality of music meant that the Unfinished Business era was finished quickly. It's Almost Dry by Pusha T. It's Almost Dry, Pusha T's highly anticipated follow-up to Daytona, debuted at number 1 in April 2022, giving the veteran rapper his first ever chart-topping album. It earned 55,000 album equivalent units in its first week, with 9,000 in pure sales, which was very low for a number 1 album. Co-produced by Kanye West and Pharrell, the album was critically acclaimed because of the amazing production and Pusha's coke raps. Songs like Diet Coke and Neck and Wrist featuring Jay-Z helped build hype in the weeks leading up to the release. However, the album fell off quickly. After its number 1 debut, it vanished from the Billboard 200 within just 7 weeks, an unusually short run for a chart topper. The lack of a mainstream hit likely contributed to the album's limited staying power. Pusha was never a mainstream artist, even though fans and purists called it one of the best hip-hop albums of 2022. While the album dominated hip-hop conversations briefly and even received a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Album, its commercial chart run was very short. Which albums that debuted at number 1 and disappeared did I miss? Tell me in the comments below.